Now in our prior example, we determined how to calculate the finance charge that would be charged on a credit card when the previous balance was not paid off and additional purchases were being made using a method called the previous balance method. In this example, we're going to take a look at the average daily balance method, which is a little bit more involved, but this is also the one that is used in more actual real-life credit card scenarios. So in this example, Deb used her credit card for the billing cycle of April 25th through May 24th. Now on the billing date of May 25th, she had a balance of $876. She'll send in a payment of $20 that will be credited to her account on June 3rd. Additionally, she made a cell phone payment of $85.75 on May 29th, bought gas on June 6th for $51.43, and spent $112.20 on groceries on June 20th. For Part A, we're going to determine the average daily balance for the billing cycle. So if the previous billing cycle was from April 25th through May 24th, then the next billing cycle goes from May 25th to June 24th. We're going to need to keep track of everything that happens on the card over this time frame, and we're also not only going to have to keep track of how much something occurred, but also when it occurred. So right here I have organized dates out of all this information that was presented to us about what was going on the card on any particular date. Now the first thing we're going to look at is when this billing cycle opens, what was the account balance? And the account balance will be whatever the previous billing date's amount was. So on the billing date of May 25th, her balance was $876. So that's going to be the opening balance for the new cycle. The next thing that happened on the card was going to be on May 29th. They made the payment of $85.75. The next thing that happened was on June 3rd, the payment was credited to the account. Then on June 6th, gas was bought for $51.43. And then finally on June 20th, groceries were bought for $112.20. In order to figure out the average daily balance, it's helpful to make a table like this. So I've already broken out this table with these different dates. And I like to also write out the table not only for what the date started at, but through what date it ended through. So all of these dates over here are these dates that are up here. So then for these ones, these are all just going to be whatever the previous date is. And then this June 24th is the end of the billing cycle. Now sometimes on these examples, I think it's actually helpful to have a calendar. So I have a calendar right here that will have May, and then down here we'll have June. So right now I'm keeping track of what's going on this card from May 25th through June 24th. Okay, so that's the billing cycle, so I'm not going to be worried about anything that happens outside of those date ranges. Now on May 25th, that's when the billing date for the previous billing cycle was, and at that point in time we owed $876 on the card. We will continue every day owing $876 on the card until something happens on the card. The next thing that happens on the card will be on the 29th. Okay, so this is going to be the last day that the card balance was sitting at $876, because on the 29th, the cell phone payment goes through for $85.75. So now at this point in time, I will still owe this $876, but now I also owe this in addition to that. Adding those two things together tells me that my balance on the card at that point in time would be $961.75. Now the card will sit at this amount, owing $961.75, until the next thing happens. And the next thing that happens on the card will be when the payment goes through. All right, so the payment's going to go through on, what day was it? On the 3rd. So moving into June then, this card is still sitting at $961.75. This is going to be the last day it's sitting at $961.75, because then on June 3rd the payment goes through and it's going to reduce this balance by $20. Okay, so as opposed to adding this amount, we're going to subtract it because I'm going to reduce the balance on the card, and now the card will be at $941.75. Now the card will continue being at $941.75 until the next thing happens, which was going to happen on the 6th. So going back to this example over here, on the 6th, gas was purchased, and then the next thing happens after that was that on the 20th, groceries were purchased. So I'm just going to keep track of that on the calendar. On the 6th, gas was purchased for $51.43. And then finally on the 20th, groceries were purchased for $112.20. And then finally the account closes on the 24th. Okay, so this means that this balance will continue to be on the card until the 5th, because then on the 6th, when this thing happens, the card balance will be at $941.75 plus this amount, or $993.18. This card will sit at $993.18 through the 19th, because then on the 20th, groceries were purchased, which will increase this balance up to $1,105.38. This is the last thing that happened on the card, and then that will go through the 24th when the cycle closes. When we are told that we want to find the average daily balance, what that means is I want to average all of these numbers, over all these days. So to average, you would add them all up, divide by how many there are. So I would do 876 plus 876 plus 876 plus 876 plus 961.75 plus 961.75, so on and so forth. I would add all of these numbers up over all of these different dates and then divide by how many different dates there are. Now we could sit here and we could go through and add them all up, so there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on and so forth. But otherwise, from the 25th through the 24th, there's going to be 31 elapsed days, because May has 31 days in here. Okay, so we'll have to know on the different calendar months how many days are in a particular month. So since May has 31 days, from the 25th to the 24th of June, 31 days will have elapsed. Okay, so we're just going to keep track of all of that as opposed to having a calendar. That's where this table comes in. So on the 25th, this opened at 876, and it will be at 876 for May 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th. That's 4 elapsed days. Then on the 29th, the cell phone payment goes through. So we're going to show our work in this table here. So I'm going to take the previous balance and add $85.75 to it. So at that point I'm at $961.75. And I will sit at this balance until I go through June 2nd. So that'll be May 29th, 30th, 31st, June 1st, and June 2nd. That's 5 days. Next thing is June 3rd, the payment goes through, so this will be at $961.75, and I will subtract the payment of $20. So now I'm at $941.75. I will sit at this amount from June 3rd, June 4th, and June 5th. That's 3 days. Then on June 6th, gas was purchased, so then I was at $941.75. I made a purchase for $51.43. So now at that point in time I'll be at $993.18, and I want to keep track of how many days that was. Now if at any point in time you just want to, assuming that you're not like hopping over the end of a calendar year like from May 29th to June 2nd, to figure out how many days have elapsed from June 6th to June 19th, if you wanted to subtract the 2 days, you're going to have to also then add 1. So the amount of lapsed days between June 6th to June 19th is going to be 19 minus 6, which is 13, and then plus 1, which gives me 14 days. And again, if you weren't sure about that, you could go back to, rattling it off, counting it off on your fingers, or on these ones, you won't have these calendars on exams, but when working on homework, sometimes being able to pull out a calendar and actually physically count the days is really helpful. Okay, so then finally on June 20th, groceries were purchased, so the account was sitting at $993.18. I'm going to now add to my overall balance that I would owe of $112.20. So now the overall balance is at $1105.38. And it's going to sit at that amount until the cycle closes on the 24th. So I've got June 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. That's 5 elapsed days. And one of the nice things is you could double check right here is that since we know May has 31 days, So that's going to mean that there's going to be 31 days in this billing cycle. When you add up the number of days over here in this column, they need to add to 31. Alright, so now we have everything we need to figure out the average daily balance. So as opposed to doing the repeated addition, I'm going to instead multiply what the balance is on a particular day times how many days that balance occurred. And I'm going to do that for all of these different balances. So 876 occurred over 4 days. 961.75 occurred over 5 days. 941.75 occurred over 3 days. 993.18 occurred over 14 days, and then finally 1105.38 occurred over 5 days. So then multiplying the balance times the number of days and then adding them up over all of these different period breaks, that'll get me then this overall sum, and then I'll divide it by how many numbers I have in my data set, which is 31. Alright, so throwing all of this in my calculator, I'm getting up here in the numerator, just doing all of these multiplications and then additions, gives me 30569.42, and then I'll divide that by 31. So this gives me an average daily balance of $986.11. Alright, so now that we have the average daily balance, we can figure out what the finance charge is going to be on June 25th, which is going to be the next billing date. Alright, so they're going to charge finance charges of 15% of an annual percentage rate on this average daily balance. So the finance charge will be the principal times the rate times the time. And in this case, the principal is going to be my average daily balance, or the 986.11. Now at this point in time, if I wanted to use this annual percentage rate of 15% as a decimal would be 0.15, then my time at this point in time would be over 1 month, which would be then 1/12 of a year. Okay, so if I wanted to leave my rate in terms of years, I have to express my time in terms of years. Okay, so then throwing this in my calculator, I would get to the nearest penny $12.33. Now the other way to do this is if I had a 15% annual percentage rate, this rate then would be, in terms of a monthly rate, 15 divided by 12, or 1.25% rate per month. So at that point in time, if I wanted to use this instead, the finance charge would be the average daily balance, or the 986.11, times the rate for over a month would be 0.0125, and then over 1 month. Okay, so if I wanted to set it up this way instead, converting my annual percentage rate to a monthly rate, and then just doing this over 1 month, you end up getting the same value. Okay, so then moving on to the last part, let's determine the balance that would be due on June 25th. Now at this point in time in this table, we've already taken care of all of the purchases and credits. Right, so then we started here, these, we added other purchases, we subtracted the payments. So at this point in time, if there were no finance charges on this card, if we wanted to pay off the card, we would have paid $1,105.38. That's if there were no finance charges. That's what it would take to pay off this card. So we still have to pay off the $1,105.38. But now in addition to that, we have the finance charges that we owe of $12.33. Which means the balance due on June 25th will be $1,117.71. Now, this is the easiest way to compute this, but another way to maybe see what's going on is to come back up here, kind of like what we did on our previous example. So originally we owed $876 on the card. This was another purchase we made, this was a purchase we made, and that was a purchase we made. So our purchases at that point in time total $249.38. We had this payment of $20 go through. So another way we could compute this, so maybe we can kind of see things a little bit better, is the previous balance. And this is actually how they break it out on the top of a statement. They say the previous balance was the $876. They're going to add your new purchases, which would be at $249.38. They're going to subtract off your payments, which reduces everything by $20. And since you didn't pay that previous balance off, now you'll be hit with a finance charge of $12.33. So if you were to do this calculation instead, you will still end up at this $1,117.71.